Hello, and welcome to this installment of Art You Can See in a Day. I'm Brock McGrath here at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas. The gallery where I'm standing displays the museum's collection of late 19th century art, and here's the work I came to present, James Henry Beard's It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? According to an 1875 article in the Art Journal, J.H. Beard started his career doing portraits of townspeople in Painesville, Ohio, where he lived during his adolescence. Because he has had little experience, Beard had to undercut the prices of a traveling artist whose visit to Painesville coincided with Beard's first efforts to find work as an artist. Once his skill developed, Beard left home to become a traveling artist like his one-time rival, and after several years, having found little or no work, he took a job in a desperate moment as a chair painter in Cincinnati. But things got better, and in 1846 he went to New York, where he exhibited his The North Carolina Immigrants. This painting sold for $750, which at the time was the most paid for any American painting. Though Beard made his name as a painter of genre pictures as well as the great men of his time, including Generals Harrison and Taylor, Henry Clay, and others, he is best remembered today for his later satirical pictures and portraits of domestic pets, paintings which suggest a satire on the frailties or vanities of human nature. It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? Is one such painting. Formally, what strikes one first when looking at It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? Is its use of shadow and foreshortening to create the illusion of depth. In the painting, light comes in from the front left of the sitting subject. The ape seated on the chair appears in the middle ground, set back against a simple wall of brick and plaster, the chair just a few inches behind two books to either side. Behind the animal is the hearth, set in shadow, the furthest point in the painting's perspective scheme. Beard's use of color sets the dark tones of the ape's fur off from the bland palette of the walls and furniture. The yellows and reds and browns claim little of the viewer's attention, allowing the ape to capture the viewer's gaze, an effect aided by the red cloth behind the ape, separating him from the chair and the wall and causing him to stand out. However, it is the blue of the tablecloth, one which is thin enough to show the table's outline beneath, that first catches the viewer's eye, drawing her gaze up to the ape's curious expression and then down the line of his other arm to the pamphlet on Darwin's Descent of Man. It is interesting to note, however, that the Darwin pamphlet in the ape's hand belongs to the mundane palette of the room. Set before the ape's knee, the contrast of light and dark keeps it from fading into the background. Why does Beard choose to depict the Darwinian pamphlet in the similar colors to the mundane world in which this bizarre scene occurs? The deconstructive method might, by raising questions, help to explore the meaning of Beard's work, and I think the place to start is with questioning the color scheme of the pamphlet, along with the other books of the room. If it is the case, as I believe, that Beard uses earthy tones to suggest the banal and the mundane, painting in similar hues the room itself and its furnishings, then it may be the work's humor arises from the dark figure of the ape in the center of the room struggling to understand his relationship with humanity. The confusion presented in the picture is not why an ape is reading or how he got into this room, but instead what a materialistic and scientific worldview means for us. In a strange way, Beard's picture may put us in community with the ape. On the table beside the ape is an ape's skull, and below him, at his feet, is a human one. Each has a jawline that appears vaguely similar to a grin. This adds a layer to the juxtaposition of an ape sitting upright in a chair and reading a pamphlet on the animal origins of humanity. It may even satirize the controversy that surrounds the evolution debate, both then and now. The placement of a book on Pythagorean thought beneath the table adds to this effect, suggesting the displacement of archaic thinking in favor of the new. But both books belong to the mundane color scheme. It is the attempt at a thorough, rigorous comprehension of a scientific worldview that both the ape in the painting and the painting's external spectators find so incomprehensible. Through this irony, we arrive at humor. Because J.H. Beard was a self-taught artist, it is difficult to classify his work as belonging strictly to one movement. Stylistically, the painting conforms generally to the Romantic movement. A key component of the Romantic aesthetic is the use of settings that indicate the passage of time. Beard uses a worn room for his setting, and it is very queer, isn't it? Also at stake in the Romantic movement is the relationship between man and the state of nature, which is the point of tension this painting exploits to create humor. The form of this painting fails to meet the standards of true Romantic art. For one thing, it is, despite the use of shadow and foreshortening, a relatively flat painting. Also, the ape's proportions are awkward, its legs seeming to bend at a point past the knee, its torso shrouded in darkness. Finally, despite the work of Pythagoras that sits under the table, this painting does not seem to make any reference to the classical tradition. All these are common traits of folk art. The simplicity in Edward Hicks' The Peaceable Kingdom shares all this with Beard's later It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? However, Beard's use of line, shading, and proportion are much more sophisticated, so it can't be called folk art either. I think Beard's It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? Is best described as belonging to a kind of folk romanticism that prefigures realism. Because it is a social satire related to the scientific upheaval of Darwinian evolution, it belongs to the realist movement. A good work to compare with Beard's is Daumier's Nadar elevating photography to the height of art. Both deal with the problems the modernity poses. In the case of Daumier's work, it is making sense of photography's place, whether as an art or as a mere technology. Both Daumier and Beard may indicate their sympathies. Beard by his putting in the place of a man, an ape, and Daumier by depicting photography's pursuit of artistic status as an absurd and precarious ride up over Paris in a hot air balloon. But neither tries to answer for us. The humor comes from setting up the question in a way that the viewer arrives at whatever conclusion the artist desires her to. Franz Kafka's Report to an Academy tells the story of an ape who, captured by hunters, is shipped off to Europe and chooses to become civilized by watching the crew of the ship. He relates his story to a scientific academy, saying that what began as a way to deal with the boredom of his captivity ended in a complete transformation, preventing him from truly understanding his previous life as an ape. It is through becoming civilized that the world becomes a confusing place, requiring more civilizing to understand, increasing its confusion, and so on. It is remarkable that Kafka's Report to an Academy expresses a nearly identical concern with the relation of civilization to the state of nature as does Beard's It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? Moreover, both Kafka's story and Beard's painting turn a serious quandary into a humorous situation. They even do so through the same gesture of placing an ape, instead of a man, at the center of this conflict. For its relation to Kafka's story, most likely written without any knowledge of Beard's work, and for its satirical genius, pointing toward the troubling relation of nature to humanity, and, also, to humanity's relation to nature, subsuming it as it does under the categories of civilization. For this, I think Beard's It Is Very Queer, Isn't It? Deserves to be recognized as among the great works of art that you can see in a day.